on inequalities. And then you have the project I assigned Monday that's not due till January 22nd. So today we're going to do the lesson on inequalities, and then I'm going to give you time to do the homework. We should have a little bit of time, but it's kind of a longer lesson. So the bell ringer today is 3x plus 7 equals 31. Solve for x. So go ahead and do that really quick, and then type your answer in the chat. So the first thing I want to do is move the 7 because I want to get x by itself. So I'm going to do the opposite of addition, which is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. What is 31 minus 7? 24. So I'll have 3x equals 24. Now I'm going to get the x by itself and divide both sides by 3. And 24 divided by 3 gives me 8. Okay. So the reason I have that as the warm-up today is because we're solving inequalities. And I mean, inequalities are basically the same thing as equations, except instead of an equal sign, they have a symbol, but we treat it pretty much just the same. So it's just like solving those. So it's kind of a review of what we first started with, but just like one little twist. So you should have reviewed or learned inequalities in 8th grade. But here's a quick refresher. An inequality is, why is this not working? There we go. What the heck? Mathematical. This is crazy. It's like not writing correctly. There we go. It's a mathematical sentence that compares expressions. So it's comparing two different things. So like 8 is greater than 2. It's comparing those, but with inequalities, we use x. So 8 is greater than x. So we're trying to solve what that symbol could be. What is smaller than 8? So here's the symbols we use. Is less than or smaller than or fewer than, greater than or more than. It looks like this. Then we throw in the alligator mouths with a line underneath them, which means is less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. So right now it's saying that 2 is less than 8, but then if we throw it in like this, 8 is greater than or equal to, so that means it could be equal to, so it could be 8 because 8 is equal to 8. That make a little sense? It should be a review. Okay. Now, graphing inequalities you should have done, but here is a review again. If it's a normal alligator mouth from like when you were in 3rd grade with no line underneath it, it's an open circle. But then once we put the line underneath it, it becomes a closed or shaded in circle. So when we're graphing, we always want to have x on the left-hand side and our number on the other side. That way we can just follow what this arrow looks like to graph. So it's saying that x is less than or equal to 2. So I'm going to put my circle on 2, and is it going to be open or closed? What does the sign tell me it needs to be, open or closed? Yes, closed, because it has the line underneath. So I'm going to shade that in because that means we're including 2. Now, it's if you have your X on the left side, it's pretty simple because I just think of this as the way my arrow is pointing, and I can just draw a little line. So it's going to include all of these numbers onto infinity. So that's how you graph an inequality. You put your circle, it's open or closed based on this symbol, and then your line goes on forever, and it's an arrow because it goes on to infinity. So it's saying that X can be any of these numbers that the line is on front of, including 2. But if it's an open circle, that means we can't include it. Okay? Any questions on how I graphed, or need me to do it again? Okay. And so if you're given an equation that's like 3 less than X, and you have to write it around, turn it around to get X on the left side, I always look at which way the point is, and remember that the point is going to be facing 3. That way my sign flips the right way. That's just like my little brain trick. Or you can just flip it completely, but it just helps me make sure I know I did it right. Okay. Moving on, we're going to graph a couple more just to get practice. So for this first one, am I going to have an open or closed circle? Closed. I'm going to put it on 0. And then my arrow is going to be pointing to the left again. So arrow that way. Next, open or closed circle for X is greater than -9. Someone besides Isaiah answer. I'm going to have an open or closed circle. Opened, thank you. So -9, I'm going to put an open circle, and then I see that my arrow is pointing that way, so I'm going to draw my line and put an arrow. Because it can include any of these numbers to infinity. Okay. Now, solve and graph the inequality. So we're going to solve for X, or simplify it, and then graph. Remember, we treat this like an equal sign. It's just a different symbol. So what I'm going to do first is move my 6 to get X by itself. These will cancel, and I'm left with X. Keep my same symbol. -10 plus 6 gives me -4. So now I have it with just 2 things, so I can graph it. I know it's going to be a closed circle on -4 going this way. So that's all you're going to have to do on the homework. So you're going to solve and then graph it. So does anyone have questions on solving inequalities or graphing them? Okay. So I'm going to go quick through these. That way you can have more time to work on the homework. Now you might see different letters like Y, K, J, whatever. They all mean the same thing. I've also seen some people teach it this way, where instead of doing the sign, they treat it just like an equation and just make it an equal sign until the very end. So you could also do that. Change this to an equal sign if that's easier for your brain to comprehend because the symbol is too confusing. So I'm subtracting 8 from both sides. These cancel, and I get Y is equal to -3. Then I can come back and rewrite it using my symbol. If that's easier for you, go for it. But whatever makes it make sense in your brain. Whatever works for you. So then this one, we're going to add, or we're going to subtract. So I'm going to subtract 1.4. And m is greater than, so -8 and subtract 1.4 will give me -9.4. So just do your best to get it on the graph where you think it would be. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then this time my m is on the wrong side, so I have to flip it. So it'll become, that way my arrow goes the right way. Because if I had my arrow going this way, it's saying that all of these numbers are included to negative infinity, but they're not, because m is bigger than -9 and all of these numbers are bigger than -9. These numbers are smaller. So if your arrow's going the wrong way, you're going to get the problem wrong, even if you solved it correctly. Okay. Multiplying and dividing inequalities by a negative number, you must flip the inequality sign once you do that. So if you divide it or multiply it by a negative number, you flip the sign. Just like we flipped it right here. You're going to flip it. Okay? So here's some examples. Well, this is a positive one, so I'm going to multiply by 8, just like I would on my equations. This is just an equal sign, just a different look. Those cancel and I get x is greater than 40. And then I'm going to graph it. So I'll do open circle on 40. Boom. Just like that. Okay, and then this is not a negative yet. It's a division problem. Divide by 3 to both sides. Those cancel. I'm left with x. -24 divided by 3 is -8. I'm not flipping the sign because this number is positive. It's only if I multiply or divide to both sides by a negative number. Just because this one's negative, I don't flip it. Only if this bottom number, or like in this case, the one you multiply it by, is negative. A lot of people get confused on that. Don't let it trip you up. Only if the number that moves is negative. But I am going to turn it around so that the x is on the left side. But I'm not flipping the sign. I'm still going to keep the pointed part next to the x. If I were to flip the sign, I would make it look like this and then turn it around and it would be like this. But I'm not flipping it. I'm just turning it around. So I'm going to do -8. So close circle and boom. Okay, 2 more. This time they're negative. So I'm going to multiply both sides by a -3. What's -3 times 2? -6, greater than y. Now I'm going to flip the sign and it becomes like this. Now I want it to be that y is on the left side. Just like that. So I'll do -6, -5, -4, 2, 8. Open circle on -6. Arrow. So I'm flipping it because I've used a negative here. And then I also turned it around so the y was on the left side. Last example, -7. I'm going to divide both sides by -7 to get y by itself. 35 divided by 7 gives me 5. It's positive because they're both negative. Now I'm going to flip. And it'll become y is greater than or equal to 5. So 2 important things to, well, 3. Okay, 3 important things to remember. An inequality sign is just like an equal sign when we're solving. Make sure your letter is on the left side so your graph is correct. and make sure you flip the sign if you multiply or divide by a negative number. Okay, I already assigned the homework. It's on a Jamboard. That way you guys can graph it for us. It's 2.2 and 2.3, 1 and 2-step inequalities. So you have 15 minutes to work on that. It's 15 or 16 problems. So the rest of the period is yours. If you have questions, let me know and I will help you with it.
I've got a question.
Yes.
So you said to always have like the signs flipped, kind of. Are you basically kind of saying like the X or the letter is always supposed to be on the left?
Yes, always make sure your variable is on the left side when you're trying to graph it.
And when you put it on the left, you flip the arrow too, correct?
No, the arrow stays the same.
Okay.
Like it turns, but it's not flipping.
Okay. I see what you mean.
So if it's flipping, it's going to change completely, but we're keeping it to mean the same thing. It's just turning.
All right. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. My computer keeps freezing.